Imagine for a second, right, that your DNA isn't just this static physical blueprint for your eye color or your height or, your risk for heart disease.
Right, like we usually think of it.
Exactly. Imagine it is actually this dormant biological software just waiting for a passcode. And that passcode isn't a chemical. It's your morality.
Which is just a wild concept to wrap your head around.
It really is.
Yeah.
What if the strands coiled inside your cells contain a hidden evolutionary roadmap that literally dictates how you perceive time, how human beings structure the global economy, and maybe even how we unlock spontaneous science fiction level physical healing?
I mean, it completely upends how we view biology, because we normally think of ourselves as these highly advanced, finished products of evolution.
Yeah, the top of the food chain.
Right. But the material we are analyzing today proposes that we are actually currently operating on a very rudimentary biological awareness system, one that actually prioritizes a massive, stressful illusion of separateness.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we are taking a deep dive into an audio excerpt detailing something called the 27th gene key.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission for you today is to trace this incredible evolutionary path that supposedly lives right inside human DNA. We're going to journey from the shadow of selfishness through the gift of altruism, all the way up to the ultimate realization, which they call the city of selflessness.
It's quite a journey.
It is. But before we get into the weeds, we need to define what we're actually talking about. Like, what exactly is a gene key in this context?
Well, think of a gene key as a specific frequency of code in your DNA that can express itself in 3 completely different ways, depending on your emotional and psychological state.
Okay, so it's state dependent.
Exactly. The lowest frequency is what the source calls the shadow, the middle is the gift, and the absolute highest potential is the CD. It's highly mechanical. I mean, your attitude and your awareness basically act as these epigenetic triggers.
They tell the DNA which version of the software to run, which means we have to start at the absolute baseline of this 27th gene key, right? The lowest frequency, the shadow of selfishness. Now, when we hear selfishness, I think the immediate image is like a cartoonish villain hoarding all the resources, swimming in good coins, and just laughing at the poor.
Oh, for sure. That's the cultural baggage of the word.
Right, but this framework defines it completely differently.
It does. It strips away the moral judgment entirely. I mean, selfishness here isn't an inherent evil. It is simply a lack of consideration that's born out of survival mode.
Like a physiological panic.
Yes. When you are in physical pain or when you are deeply restless and anxious inside, there literally is not enough bandwidth in your biological awareness to consider anyone else. You just can't.
You're just trying to survive.
Right. And the material uses this incredibly vivid metaphor for it. It describes the shadow of selfishness as being stuck in a tight room.
A tight room.
Yeah, like you are living a tight little life with a tight frame of mind, basically gasping for air.
Wow. So if I'm stuck in that tight room, panicking for breath, society's current solution isn't to open the door. It's like to sell me a nicer poster to hang on the wall.
Yeah, that's spot on.
Is that what is meant when this material critiques modern culture as a societal disease?
That is a perfect way to visualize it. To understand why we are collectively trapped in this tight room, we actually have to look at the programming partner of the 27th gene key, which is the 28th gene key.
And that one is purposelessness, right?
Exactly. Purposelessness. Historically, large religious structures provided humanity with a sense of higher purpose.
Even if it was flawed.
Right, because that purpose was often delivered in a deeply unhealthy way, like authorities dictating exactly what your purpose should be, with plenty of individuals profiting off your compliance.
But as those traditional structures have declined in Western culture, we haven't really replaced them with anything structurally sound.
No, we haven't.
We are just left with this massive vacuum, a deep sense of purposelessness. And human biology cannot tolerate a void of meaning. It creates immense physiological stress.
It does. And when people feel that lack of deeper meaning, they will do absolutely anything to distract themselves from the panic.
Right, to ignore the tight room.
Exactly. Traditionally, humanity distracted itself from purposelessness by going to war, but today the preferred method of distraction is going shopping.
Wow. We replaced the battlefield with the shopping mall.
Basically, yes.
So consumerism isn't just greed. It is this frantic physiological attempt to fill a void of meaning because we are literally suffocating in that tight room.
That's the argument.
But, I need to push back on this premise a little bit on behalf of the listener, because Wait, isn't looking out for number one a biological necessity?
It's a fair question.
I mean, the classic airplane safety rule comes to mind. You have to put on your own oxygen mask before helping someone else. If I pass out from lack of oxygen, I am literally no good to the person sitting next to me.
Well, what's fascinating here is how this framework resolves that exact paradox. It explicitly acknowledges that nurturing yourself is absolutely vital. Like you said, you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Right.
The crucial distinction lies in the underlying mechanism, the how and the why you are operating. So self-care is about maintaining your capacity to engage with the world. Selfishness, in the context of this shadow, derives from ignorance.
Ah, I see.
It's the persistent illusion that you are fundamentally separate from everyone else. And importantly, the source argues that this illusion is primarily environmental. It is nurture much more than it is nature.
Which means it's a learned behavior.
Exactly.
So if we accept that this suffocating panic is learned and that selfishness is driven by our environment, we have to look at the exact moment that programming is installed.
Right.
We have to look at childhood.
Yeah, and a major focus of this 27th gene key is exactly that, how we raise our children, because it forces us to examine the emotional, social, and spiritual atmosphere they are incarnating into.
Yeah, the source material is pretty intense on this. The author is speaking from the perspective of a father, right?
He is, and he's delivering a stark warning about the epigenetic pressures we place on the next generation.
He talks about how kids are dropped into the school system by the age of 4. And instead of nurturing their natural state, they are groomed to be what he calls consumer children.
It's a harsh term, but it fits.
Let's think about the mechanics of a 4-year-old walking into a classroom. They come into the world unselfish, with a sweet, open heart. But very quickly, they are explicitly taught a model of reality that values competitive taking over giving. They learn to hoard the best crayons, they compete for the highest grades, they start viewing their peers as obstacles to their own success.
Yes.
They are literally schooled in selfishness by the structural design of modern society.
And if the adult world is built on the illusion of separateness and consumerism to mask a profound lack of purpose, then naturally we reverse engineer our educational systems to produce individuals who fit perfectly into that mold.
Wow. We teach them how to decorate the tight room.
That's beautifully put, yes. We teach them how to decorate the tight room. But there is a specific mechanical antidote to this conditioning, a way to actually rewrite the software.
Oh, the golden question.
Exactly. It's introduced as the golden question.
I want you listening right now to really internalize this because it's a massive practical tool.
It is. The golden question is this. In any situation, instead of asking, how can I best serve myself, you must consciously stop and ask, how can I best serve my higher purpose in this situation?
That's a huge shift.
It really is, because those two questions will almost always demand entirely different actions.
So what does this all mean? If you actually start asking that golden question, it forces a deeply uncomfortable physiological reckoning.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, to know how to serve your higher purpose, you actually have to know what your higher purpose is. You can't just buy something on Amazon to numb the void anymore.
Well, you can't.
You have to willingly walk into the shadow. You have to sit quietly in that tight, airless room of your own selfishness and really examine the underlying reasons for your unhappiness.
And that willingness to sit in the discomfort is the biological turning point. I mean, it's painful to admit our own self-absorption, but the moment you confront that unhappiness and begin uncovering your unique higher purpose, a literal shift in your biology initiates.
The software changes.
Right. When that higher purpose unlocks, it naturally has an altruistic ring to it. And this boots up the next frequency of the evolutionary roadmap, which is the 27th gift. Altruism.
Okay, this is a crucial distinction. Altruism is not framed here as some, luxury for wealthy philanthropists.
Not at all.
It's not about grinding away in a job you hate until your bank account hits a certain threshold so you can finally start writing checks to charity. Altruism is framed as our fundamental biological nature. When you unlock that higher purpose, your physical health actually blossoms. The material describes developing an aura, a literal glow of altruism, because there is no biological tonic in the world like unconditional giving.
It heals the body.
It does. But here's where it gets really interesting. The framework introduces a mind-bending concept regarding the physics of time.
Ah, yes, the connection between generosity and time dilation.
Yes, because think about it. Generosity isn't just about money. It is about your most precious, finite commodity, which is your time.
Right.
Now, logically, giving your time away to others should leave you with less of it. It's a bizarre paradox. You'd think your day would just vanish. But this source material claims that joyousness and altruism actually make time expand.
It sounds counterintuitive, but to understand how that works, we have to look at the mechanics of perception.
Right. Think of your brain's processing power like a computer's RAM. When you're in the shadow of selfishness, 90% of your RAM is running heavy, stressful background anxiety programs.
Always calculating.
Exactly. You are constantly calculating how to protect your ego, how to hoard resources, how to defend your tight little room. And because of that, time moves in an absolute blur. Your nervous system is completely overloaded, you're exhausted, but you haven't really gone anywhere.
You're just spinning your wheels. But an altruistic day shuts down those background apps. When you are open-hearted and giving, you aren't running those survival calculations.
The RAM frees up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Suddenly, your awareness has the bandwidth to deeply process every single second. So an hour of genuine selfless connection feels like an entire day because you are actually present to experience it.
Wow.
You step outside of mechanical, anxiety-driven clock time and into an entirely different biological rhythm. You're finally breathing.
It's incredible to think about time management not as like scheduling, but as biological bandwidth.
Yes. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you can start to see how this altruistic energy scales up. Because the 27th gift isn't just about individuals having a nice glow. It's about entirely new global structures.
Right.
If enough individuals change their biological frequency, the macro systems have to follow suit. The text envisions a future monetary system driven by philanthropy rather than sheer, endless profit extraction.
Which is hard to even picture right now.
It is, but it also points to an educational system that considers the holistic development of the whole child, rather than just training them to be competitive, mind-centric consumers. It points to systems of governance based on virtue rather than the accumulation of power.
And we're actually already seeing the cracks in the old system.
We really are.
Look at the corporate world.
Yeah.
Business is arguably the ultimate domain of the shadow of selfishness, right? Pure competition. Yet corporate social responsibility is no longer just a PR stunt.
No, it's demanded by the public.
Exactly. It is becoming a foundational requirement for companies to survive. The vibration of this 27th gift is already bleeding into our collective structures.
Humanity occupies a highly unique position in this evolutionary timeline. I mean, we alone have the technological power to destroy our planetary environment, but we also possess the biological capacity to heal it. And healing is the absolute core mechanism of this gene key. We heal our own nervous systems through our individual higher purpose, and that scales up to heal the planet through our collective higher purpose.
But if time is expanding and global structures are shifting, just because we unlock this altruistic bandwidth, it kind of forces a much larger biological question.
Where does it lead?
Right. Is there a ceiling to this mutation? What happens to the physical body when that feeling of interconnectedness reaches 100%? And that brings us to the ultimate realization.
Yeah.
The 27th CD, which is selflessness.
The CD represents the highest possible frequency of this genetic software. And this stage of selflessness expresses itself in two distinct ways. One side is beautifully, almost shockingly ordinary. And the other side reads like something straight out of a science fiction novel.
Let's tackle the sci-fi side first, because the mechanics being proposed here are massive.
They really are.
The source says that as human DNA continues to mutate, it is going to create an entirely new awareness operating system. So instead of feeling separate, which, as we discussed, is the root of all that tight, panicked selfishness, we will continuously and physically feel our interconnectivity with all other creatures.
Even the inanimate environment around us.
Yes. The text explicitly compares this future human state to the Jedi Knights in Star Wars, feeling the Force flowing through them.
It's a great analogy. When awareness completely eliminates the sense of a separate self, the life force isn't bottlenecked by an ego anymore. It just flows through the physical vessel in an unprecedented way.
And it claims this leads to what we historically call miracles. It uses the stories of Jesus as an early example of this city in action.
Right.
Like a blind man suddenly seeing or severe mental illnesses spontaneously healing. The claim is that spontaneous DNA replication and the exponential expansion of our cellular healing mechanisms will just become a standard reality.
A natural function of the body.
But wait, hold on. I have to interrupt here because this is a massive leap for you, the listener, to swallow.
It is a huge leap.
We've gone from, shut down your background anxiety to manage time better to we are literally going to become magical Jedi healers who can spontaneously regenerate cells. Like, are we genuinely talking about magic?
Well, this raises an important question about the limits of our current scientific paradigm versus the actual potential of our biology. The material grounds these sci-fi claims in theoretical mechanics, not magic.
Okay, how so?
Think about what happens when you shift entirely out of survival mode. If you are no longer operating from a baseline of fear, your nervous system permanently shifts out of sympathetic fight or flight.
Right, the RAM is completely clear.
Exactly. Your cortisol levels plummet. The immense biological energy, the ATP, that your body normally burns just to maintain the illusion of defense is suddenly freed up entirely for cellular repair and regeneration.
Oh, wow. So the miracle is just the body finally having the uninhibited energy to do what it was designed to do all along.
Exactly. Furthermore, it points to our evolutionary timeline. In the grand scheme of geological time, it wasn't that long ago that our ancestors were swinging in trees.
True.
DNA had to mutate radically for the ape to become human. Why would we arrogantly assume evolution just hit the brakes and stopped with us? Given enough time, the code will mutate again. We are not the final draft.
We are a biological work in progress.
We really are. And if we look at the macrocosm, the very existence of the universe proves the existence of infinity.
Mm-hmm.
If infinity exists, it mathematically dictates that absolutely anything is possible, and that possibility always resides in the domain of the now. We don't have to wait a million years for a distant sci-fi future.
Right.
The selfless human being is described as someone who just has access to dimensions of physics. We simply lack the sensory apparatus to perceive right now.
So spontaneous healing isn't magic, it's just higher physics. I love how that reframes the impossible. But, what makes this deep dive truly profound is how it brings all of this soaring sci-fi theory right back down to earth with the ordinary side of the CD.
Yes, the beautifully ordinary side.
Because if we want to actually experience this evolutionary leap, the solution isn't to go isolate ourselves in a cave, meditate for 10 years, and try to forcefully mutate our own DNA. The ultimate evolutionary leap isn't about gaining superpowers at all.
No, the pinnacle of human evolution, according to this framework, is about becoming a race of saints. But not, the puritanical, rigidly judgmental version of a saint that we usually picture.
Not the pious statues in a cathedral.
Right. It describes a rich, deeply grounded, orgasmic kind of sainthood. It is simply the biological side effect of realizing you share a nervous system with the rest of the planet.
It's just people following a natural, unforced impulse to give, to love, and to live in deep communion with their environment.
Exactly.
Selflessness isn't interested in itself. It only wishes to serve the whole. And these individuals are so profoundly ordinary, they often pass completely unnoticed in our society.
They're the quiet ones.
Yeah, they aren't trying to amass millions of followers on social media or start these grand movements. They are just quietly, rhythmically nourishing the ecosystem immediately around them.
And the ultimate proof of this entire gene key, the undeniable reality check, is the one experience every single human being is guaranteed to share: death.
Yes, we arrive in this world with no concept of a separate self, and we leave this world with no separate self.
Exactly.
Therefore, the ego, the self that we obsess over, the identity we hoard resources for, the construct that builds that tight little panicked room to protect itself, is entirely an illusion sandwiched in the middle of our existence.
The Source has a great phrase for this. We come with everything. We leave with everything. We live for everything.
It's beautiful.
That is the phrase used to encapsulate the journey. The self is merely a temporary, localized construct to process the experience of living, but it is not who you actually are.
So, to summarize this incredible evolutionary roadmap we've traced today, we start at the baseline in the shadow of selfishness, trapped in a tight, breathless room of physiological panic and purposelessness, desperately trying to distract ourselves with consumerism. Then, we ask the golden question to uncover our higher purpose. This breaks down the walls of that tight room and boots up the gift of altruism.
Firing up a new frequency.
Exactly. Shutting down the background anxiety of our minds, expanding our perception of time, and beginning to structurally heal the world around us. And ultimately, that path leads into the boundless reality of the city of selflessness.
Where the illusion of separation vanishes entirely.
Right, unlocking the true, interconnected, deeply ordinary yet sci-fi potential of human DNA.
It is a profound mechanical shift from the terror of isolation to the reality of infinite connection.
So, speaking directly to you listening right now, while you might not be a Jedi Knight spontaneously regenerating cells or healing the masses today, the mechanics of this 27th gene key make it clear that the power to unlock this evolutionary code lies entirely in how you allocate your biological bandwidth right now.
The possibility is always found in the present moment.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to mull over. We established that the self you spend so much energy fiercely protecting is just a biological illusion. It's an illusion you are 100% guaranteed to lose at the end of your life anyway.
That's a given.
If that is true, what is one tiny, stressful illusion of separateness that you can actively choose to drop today? What would actually happen to your perception of time and the physical tension in your own nervous system if you treated the very next stranger you interacted with not as a separate entity competing for your time, but as a literal, physical extension of your own biological operating system?
That realization changes the entire human experience.
Until next time, keep diving deep.